Have you ever found yourself in a discussion where, even after saying everything you wanted, you walked away feeling like you lost that knot in your throat, as if every word pushed you further away from your own strength? Maybe you're surrounded by people who speak loudly, interrupt constantly, mock you, and dominate every room with arrogance disguised as confidence. And maybe, deep down, you've believed that silence meant weakness, that not defending yourself was surrendering, that not reacting was the same as losing. But what if I told you that this is all an illusion? That true power has never been in what is said, but in what is not. Nietzsche, one of the most misunderstood thinkers in history, saw what few dare to admit: those who talk too much expose too much. Those who feel the need to convince have already lost. We are taught that we must fight, argue, and defend ourselves as if every conversation were a battle. But nature teaches something else, something more subtle, more lethal, and infinitely more intelligent. Nietzsche believed that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's presence. Real, uncomfortable, undeniable presence. Silence destabilizes. It forces the other to confront themselves. This video is for you, the one who often feels ignored, overshadowed, dismissed. For you who walks away from conversations with a sense that no one really heard what mattered. For you who keeps the peace while others exploit your calm. Perhaps you've confused your silence with submission. But today, I'll show you how silence can become your most powerful weapon. That true victory isn't in winning arguments, but in not needing to enter them at all. Prepare to see silence in a new light, not as absence, but as the ultimate presence. Let's dive into Nietzsche's ideas and learn how to master any situation without uttering a single word. Why do we feel the need to respond, to correct, to prove we're right? Because we've been conditioned to think that truth needs to be defended with every breath, that silence means defeat. But Nietzsche saw this impulse as a symptom of deep fear of appearing weak. And at the root of that fear lies the ego, a fragile ego, incapable of being questioned, that turns every disagreement into a battlefield. He said, most people don't seek truth when they argue, they seek power. They don't want to understand. They want to be right. Argument, in this sense, becomes a desperate act of ego, not a tool of wisdom. So when you feel the urge to explain yourself, to justify your stance, you've already lost. Because the need to explain is proof that you still depend on validation. Nietzsche called this herd morality, the behavior of those who live for the approval of others. But true strength, Nietzsche said, lies not in convincing anyone, but in not needing to. It's the power to stand firm even when misunderstood, to stay calm while others collapse into chaos, to stop reacting. Understand this: the game of discussion is theater, and the first one to stand and perform loses. Nietzsche knew the reactive mind is already conquered. The observing mind, that is the dangerous one. It sits above the need to prove, to please. But if we are not to react, how do we express power? If words betray us, how do we let others feel our strength without speaking at all? Nietzsche had an answer. It lies in his ideal of the Bermensch, the one who transcends herd morality and dominates the world through absolute self-mastery. In the next part, we'll explore this figure and understand how silence becomes his weapon of dominance. Are you ready? Because from this point forward, silence begins to speak. If this resonates with you, click the subscribe button and support the channel. Nietzsche did not write for the weak. He wrote for the few, those who dare to look within, face their inner misery, and transform it into strength. For Nietzsche, the ordinary person is bound by convention, guilt, and applause. But the Übermensch, rare, dangerous, free, does not react to the world. He reshapes it in silence. The Übermensch doesn't argue. He doesn't play emotional games. He observes. He understands. He chooses his words carefully and, more importantly, knows when not to speak, because he's realized something most people never do. Silence is a language, a presence, a force. The silence of the Übermensch isn't empty. It's a statement. a warning, a mastery of self. While others shout, he commands with a gaze. While others explain, he unmasks with calm. His silence is a wall. The other side trembles, unsure of what lies behind it. In that confusion, they make mistakes. They expose themselves. They lose control. Silence, then, isn't passivity. It's complete control over one's energy. A precise economy of power. The Übermensch knows every word is a move revealed. Every emotional reaction a vulnerable opening. He stays silent, not because he lacks words, but because he doesn't need to speak. His silence forces others to confront their own inner noise. And in a society addicted to noise, those who master silence rule. In the next part, we will see how silence disturbs manipulators, activates hidden trauma, and unmasks illusions. Because to truly understand silence, we must understand the chaos it leaves behind. To understand the true power of silence, you must first understand the chaos it causes in others. Silence is not merely the absence of sound. It's a mirror, and what it reflects can be unbearable. When you choose not to react, you aren't just holding your tongue. You are forcing the other person to hear their own voice, to face their own arguments without the distraction of your resistance. And that's deeply unsettling, because most people don't speak to communicate. They speak to protect themselves, to fill the void, to shield the empty space between what they say and who they truly are. And when you stay silent, that disguise begins to fall away. Social psychology confirms this. In confrontational situations, silence is often perceived as judgment. It doesn't matter if you're simply listening. The speaker begins to feel exposed, uncertain, defensive. Why? Because without your reaction, they lose control of the narrative. Their brain enters a state of alert. The amygdala, the fear center, activates. They begin to project. Is he judging me? Did he catch my insecurity? Does he know I'm bluffing? In this mental battlefield, silence becomes a blade, invisible but razor sharp. It cuts without being seen, yet is always felt. Nietzsche sensed this long before science caught up. He believed the average person lives as a slave to their reactions, driven by impulse, vanity, and fear of being forgotten. But the superior being, the one who has mastered themselves, knows that every emotional reaction is a signal, a weakness, a map for the enemy. Even more terrifying for manipulators, silence disrupts their entire strategy. They depend on your reactions. Your emotion feeds their control. When you break that cycle, when you stop reacting, they panic. They falter. They reveal who they truly are. But silence goes even deeper. It triggers hidden pain. It awakens traumas of rejection, of abandonment, of humiliation. Because suddenly, the other person realizes they are not the center. Their words don't carry weight. Their presence doesn't affect you. And to a narcissistic ego, this is intolerable. So when you remain silent, you're not just avoiding conflict. You're striking at the very heart of illusion. That's why silence requires immense strength. Not just because it disarms others, but because it goes against your own conditioning. We were taught to explain ourselves, not to prove, to justify. But silence says, I owe you nothing. And that is true power. Now that you understand how silence unravels others, how it exposes, destabilizes, and unmasks, it's time to go even further. It's time to stop being merely a passive observer and become someone who wields silence with precision. From now on, you will learn how to transform your silence into a sharp, deliberate weapon. No longer a passive shield, but a blade capable of cutting through appearances with precise, surgical force. And the first step is brutal in its simplicity. Be silent when your entire being screams for a response. This is the battlefield. Your instinct will beg you to defend yourself, to explain, to prove that you're right. But that desire, it's poison. Each time you give in, you confirm that they still have control. You still care what they think. you're still playing their game. True silence is born only when the need to be understood dies. When you realize you owe no explanation, you owe no justification, your truth does not need to be spoken to exist. The second weapon is observation. While others rush to speak, you listen, not as someone waiting for your turn to respond, but like a hunter listening to the forest. You hear fears hidden between the lines. You detect contradictions. You sense the insecurity behind their arrogance. And you store all of it, because when you speak, if you speak, it will be with the precision of someone who already owns the emotional terrain. The third weapon is time. Let silence linger. The pause is tension. The pause is power. While the other waits for your reaction and it doesn't come, something breaks inside them. Their mind scrambles to fill the void with assumptions, doubts, fears, and a single glance from you accompanied by silence can hit deeper than 10 carefully chosen phrases. The fourth weapon is unpredictability. Silence makes you unreadable, and the unreadable is always feared. People no longer know what to expect from you. They become cautious. They start measuring every word. You reverse the logic of power. You go from reactive to magnetic, from listener to gravitational center. At this level, silence is no longer absence. It's dominance. But be warned, silence is not passivity. Nietzsche never advocated for weakness. The silence we speak of is intentional. It's not avoidance. It's positioning. You are not withholding. You are preparing, choosing, holding your energy like a drawn sword. And when the time comes, when silence has already said everything that needed to be said, you speak. One sentence, one precise, undeniable truth. Not because it is loud, but because it is final. But now we must face something more uncomfortable. Because up until now, we've spoken about using silence to win. But sometimes, life is not about winning. It's about emotionally surviving. There are situations where people are not simply debating with you. They're draining you, using you, and you, without realizing it, are giving away your power every single day. You are being dominated, not through shouting or confrontation, but through your own silence. This is the darkest edge of this journey, when silence is no longer strategy, but surrender. When silence is no longer a choice, but the cry of someone who has lost their voice. And Nietzsche saw this trap long before most. We are conditioned to believe that silence equals maturity, that avoiding conflict is a sign of balance, that swallowing our pain, conceding our space, letting others decide is virtuous. But what if I told you this could be a lie? That this silence, so often praised, might actually be submission, disguised as peace? Because sometimes, what you call harmony is just your domesticated surrender. Have you noticed? Some people take advantage of your calmness, of your ability to listen, to avoid conflict, to let things go. They impose their will. They occupy your space, and you let them. You tell yourself, it's not worth it. I don't want to fight. It's no big deal. But the truth is, you're paying a very high price for this false peace. And the worst part, you are being used by people who have already learned you won't react. Nietzsche called this slave morality, a value system built by the weak to survive in a world ruled by the strong. It's a morality of guilt, of self-denial, of being nice. An invisible code that teaches you to shrink yourself and feel proud of it. But Nietzsche didn't write for those who resign themselves. He wrote for those who dare to break these chains, for those who realize they're being used and decide to stop participating in their own submission. Because when you accept this type of silence, the one that swallows you from within, you surrender your power without even noticing. You start being shaped by others' expectations. You stop being yourself. You become what they want you to be. And this is the opposite of what Nietzsche called the will to power. Because the true will to power is not about shouting, not about dominating others. It's about dominating yourself. It's about reclaiming your presence. Not remaining silent because you're afraid, but because you know you owe no one an explanation. That kind of silence, the one born from fear, needs to die. And in its place must rise a new kind of silence. The silence of presence. A silence that doesn't bend, that doesn't beg, that doesn't apologize for existing. A silence that stands in the middle of chaos and without a single word changes everything. This is the silence Nietzsche would respect. The silence of someone who has become master of themselves. So how do you get there? How do you stop being manipulated and become the master of your own presence? How do you kill the herd morality that was implanted in you and be reborn as someone who commands respect even in silence? The answer lies in Nietzsche's most powerful idea, the Übermensch. We've spoken of him. Now it's time to become him, because the world doesn't need more talkers. It doesn't need more people reacting, explaining, or begging to be understood. The world needs people who master silence and rule with it. And here's the truth you must absorb with every fiber of your being. Silence is not absence. It's not a space between words. It's not emptiness. True silence is presence. It is self-mastery. It is the clearest sign that you are no longer reacting to the world. You are shaping it with your very existence. Nietzsche never wrote for those who are satisfied with survival. He wrote for those who seek transcendence, for those willing to tear off the masks that society forced upon them, even if it hurts, even if it costs, because the silence of the Übermensch is not the silence of the oppressed. It is not the silence of the coward. It is the silence of the warrior, a warrior who has already won, even before the battle begins. It is the stillness of someone who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone, because he knows who he is. And more importantly, he knows what he deserves. So now look at your life. Be honest. How many times have you remained silent out of fear, out of guilt, just to avoid disturbing others? How many times have you let someone speak for you, decide for you, walk over your truth? Enough. Nietzsche would say, to live this way is an offense to life itself. To accept this kind of silence is to betray yourself. From today forward, your silence must change its tone. It must no longer be an escape. It must become a silent roar, a boundary, a declaration, a living affirmation of who you are, even if no one understands. Because you don't exist to be understood. You exist to be lived, and that takes courage. Do you have that courage? Then write it below. Comment, I choose the silence that commands respect. Not just so I know you made it this far, but so you can affirm this commitment to yourself. Because words still have power, even when they're about silence. And don't stop here. The next video will take you further, beyond what you learned today. Watch it, not for me, but because you deserve to go beyond. And remember, the weak shout, the strong remain silent, the wise choose when.